All right, let's talk about cost of living and one of the most ridiculous things I have seen out of Canberra in a long time. And I, like you, have been watching Canberra for a long time. Now we know that successfully the Prime Minister and the Treasurer were able to slip their way around responsibility for a dozen interest rate rises by trying to blame the former Reserve Bank. And now the cost of living crisis, well, they've tried to blame one group in particular because they are the end of the chain of what you have to pay.
My government is concerned about the price of what consumers pay at Coles and Woolies and other supermarkets. We want to make sure that consumers benefit from cheaper prices which are being paid. We're dead serious. We find it completely unacceptable that when supermarkets are getting goods cheaper, the prices should go down.
So today, of course, there was the inevitable show trial when politicians would wave their fingers and carry on at the CEOs who run the supermarkets. Now, again, are these people beyond criticism? No. Is there some questions from time to time about how any business does its business? You bet. I don't defend them reflexively, but what I absolutely abhor is the behaviour of politicians who have become a little more like American politicians. So that as soon as somebody sits in front of them, then they wave and scream and carry on. And here's some of the questioning that was going back and forth between Nick McKim, who, by the way, isn't just a senator, he's actually the leader of the committee, which means he would have to call himself into order. Instead, he was threatening this garbage.
Why won't you confirm what your ROE was?
Senator, with due respect, we focus on our return on investment.
All right, I know what you focus on. Thank you, Mr Banducci. I know what you focus on.
I've answered the question many times.
You have not answered the question, Mr Banducci. These honestly, I'm not interested in your spin or your bull. This is a Senate inquiry. Answer the question.
Senator, I sit here before you very respectfully saying we measure ourselves return on investment.
Very respectfully not answering the question. It is open to the Senate to hold you in contempt, and that carries potential sanctions, including up to 6 months imprisonment for you.
Senator, I've tried to be very specific in saying what we focus on. That is where my focus is.
Well, firstly, empty threat. The contempt isn't about what you say to the committee, it's about whether you turn up to the committee or not. You see, these things, and why I think they are so unproductive, is because it's all about the politicians being able to get their heads on the telly, yelling at the figure who is public enemy number one, and not actually talking about any sort of policy changes or potential law changes or advices to about how they change their business. We saw this, of course, when it came to Qantas, when the righteous indignation that was there amongst Labor senators, and then just a couple of weeks later, they voted not to continue the same inquiry. You're either all in on the outrage or not. Now, what you're starting to see here is the Greens with their numbers and their relationship with the Labor Party, meaning that they are moving to a position where they aren't just members of these committees, they are starting to chair these committees, which mean they're in charge of how these show trials are running. Now, I know that there are those that automatically will say that any level of defence or calling out of the stupidity of the inquiry means that I'm defending somebody who's lining my pockets with thousands, nay, millions of dollars. Well, do you notice them sponsoring this program? No. Again, do I think that every business should be able to be hauled in, called to account, try to explain things? But when we're in that scenario, it's not about understanding. It is literally about a show trial, a nonsense. And the invocation of a potential jail penalty was absolute garbage. Now, of course, that should have been pointed out, that the jailing isn't about what gets said in front of the committee. Instead, it is whether you turn up to the committee or not. But do we expect anything else? Now, interestingly, some other people have similar views to me, including Elizabeth Knight, writing in the Sydney Morning Herald today, where she says that this thing became an Olympic sport. Meantime, in the Australian, quite correctly, they again see this as the silliness and the show trial that it was. It was never intended to be an exercise in information gathering by the Greens Senator. And with his other senators sitting idly by, it reflects the attitude of politicians towards business, investing and private capital in Australia is moving towards an economically destructive place.